Hey everyone, just coming to you with this public service announcement. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. So let me explain. First and foremost, it's free to do so. You don't got to come out of your pocket. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch of others platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's why I got on it. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, peace. Peace. We are back once again with Masterminds with Brother Shem. I'm your host, Brother Shem, and definitely I'm glad to be back with another episode. Just want to take the time out to thank everyone who has been supporting me on the podcast. Like I said, shout out to my day ones, those who have continued to support me throughout my journey, those who continue to support me, and those who are new to Masterminds with Brother Shem. Be sure to go and check out my website, shemel.com. That's SHEM-EL.com, where you can check out my podcasts, my videos, order my books and other merchandise that I have available. Also, you will get the ability to go ahead and proceed to get a free course lesson for you to check out and for you to give me your feedback. We're still looking towards the possibility of kicking off the MetaMind Mastery Mentorship. So if you're interested in that, definitely reach out to me through my website and let me know. So with that being said, I also, again, I've mentioned before previously that, we had a great show with Dr. Jose Pimienta Bay. We are actually looking towards having another interview. I'm looking to do another interview very soon. I reached out to a great scholar in his own right, the brother Asir, the Duke of Tears, to interview him and his other half, his wife, Selena Cordoba L. So hopefully we can make that happen. He has given me let me know that he is definitely interested in making that happen. So hopefully by the end of this month, you will have something to listen to. I'm excited about that. So without further ado, want to definitely get into the topic at hand. And this is dealing with the Logos. Now, some of you are very familiar with the term Logos. Some of you are not familiar with the term. I believe I have touched on it in the past, but I wanted to dedicate an entire episode to this subject matter. And actually, the Logos is such where, one episode in itself doesn't do justice. It doesn't explore all the aspects of the Logos. But I think this will be a great introduction to it. So with that being said, as always, I like to start from reading a passage from the Circle 7. And I will read none other than chapter 15 in the Circle 7, which speaks about the Logos. I'm only going to read 5 verses. And this is the story about self-examination. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read. It says, the harbinger had paved the way. The Logos had been introduced to men as love made manifest, and he must now begin his divine ministry. And he went forth into the wilderness to be alone with Allah, that he might look into his inner heart and note its strength and worthiness. And with himself he talked and said, my lower self is strong. By many ties I am bound down to carnal life. Have I the strength to overcome and give my life a willing sacrifice for men? When I shall stand before the face of men and they demand a proof of my messiahship, what will I say? So I just want to stop there. And that kind of sets the tone for me speaking about the Logos. First, if for those who may or may not know, the word Logos is a Greek word meaning word. So literally, when it says the Logos had been introduced to men as love made manifest, it is saying that the word had been introduced to men as love made manifest. But here, Logos is used as a title. So that's very key, with a capital L. So particularly in Moor science, it is understood that the Logos is the perfect word, that which creates, that which destroys, and that which saves. Okay? And so you have the Logos, you have the circle, which is the symbol of the perfect man, and the number 7, which is the number of the perfect man. Thus, you have the phrase, the Logos circle 7. Okay? So, this is used to describe the one who many call Jesus in modern day, the Christ, right? So, as a master, as a Hebrew master, he's considered the Logos of the Holy One, right? The omnipotent, right? That which creates, that which destroys, that which saves, right? So, but this is the symbolism of love made manifest, and the only savior is love. So I want to kind of get into that deeper. And the only way to fully, you cannot, in my humble opinion, fully comprehend the concept of the Logos without reading the first chapter of the book of John in the Bible, the gospel according to John, or what they say, St. John. So I'm going to read that. Then I'm actually, because I'll be reading from the Scofield Bible, and I'm going to actually read the footnote in there where it actually describes the Logos to give you some context, okay? It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. There was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them he gave power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. John bare witness of him and cried, saying, This was he of whom I spake. He that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. So I'll just stop there. So, as you see, is speaking about this word, right? As I mentioned, the logos is Greek for word. So when I go into this footnote, you're going to see exactly what I'm speaking about. So in the footnote from the Scofield Bible, in this chapter, it reads the following. Greek logos, Aramic memra, used in the Targums or Hebrew paraphrases for God. The Greek term means 1, a thought or concept, 2, the expression or utterance of that thought. As a designation of Christ, therefore, logos is peculiarly felicitous, felicitous, whatever that means, because in him are embodied all the treasures of the divine wisdom, the collective thought of God. And 2, he is from eternity, but especially in his incarnation, the utterance or expression of the person and thought of deity. In the being, person, and work of Christ, deity is told out. Grace, summary. Grace is the kindness and love of God, our Savior, toward man, not by works of righteousness which we have done. Titus chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. It is therefore constantly set in contrast to law, under which God demands righteousness from man, as under grace he gives righteousness to man. Laws connected with Moses and works, grace with Christ, and faith. And I'll just stop there. So, to focus on the main point, this connects with the logos. So now you have a better concept of why it says in the Circle 7 that the logos was introduced to men as love made manifest, and he must now begin his divine ministry. When you understand or comprehend that the logos is a concept or thought or the expression or utterance of that thought, right? Love being made manifest, right? So this also ties back to chapter 2 of the Circle 7, specifically when Elihu is speaking with Mary and Elizabeth, because it says, starting with verse 19, teach them that the holy breath will make them one again, restoring harmony and peace, that naught can make them one but love, that Allah so loved the world that he clothed his son in flesh that man may comprehend. The only savior of the world is love. And Jesus, son of Mary, comes to manifest that love to men. Now, love cannot manifest until its way has been prepared, and naught can rend the rock and bring down lofty hills and fill the valleys up and thus prepare the way, but purity. But purity in life men do not comprehend. And so it too was come in flesh. Okay? So that also lets you know, for us to comprehend concepts in this plane of manifest, there has to be some physical representation. Okay? So that's with that. Now, the interesting thing is that there's this controversy about the term "in the beginning," because remember, the same phrase "in the beginning was a word," you find in the book of Genesis, first chapter, first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? The Hebrew word for that is Bereshith Elohim, which basically you're saying that in the beginning, Elohim, right, which is plural, created. Now, I always say this. There is a difference between in the beginning and at the beginning. And people will say, well, what do you mean by that? The difference between in the beginning and at the beginning is equivalent to the difference between saying I'm in the house and I'm at the house. If you say I'm at the house, you literally could be outside of the house by the door, but you at the house. Where are you? I'm at the house. It means you just pulled up. If you say, where are you? I'm in the house. That literally means that you're inside of it. You pass the doorway to get in. Thus, it's the same with the beginning. To be at the beginning, it means to be by the very start point and even outside before the start point of the beginning. Because beginning marks time. I'm going to get into that to speak to time. Time never was and man was not, right? So to be in the beginning means that you are now within a time period. In fact, the Hebrew word Bereshith, from the phrase Bereshith Elohim, in the beginning God, right? Translated, which is really gods, plural, created the heavens and the earth. Bereshith means, which is the Hebrew name of the book of Genesis, the first book of the Torah. Bereshith means in the beginning. Beh. The word for beginning is Rashith, but you have the Beh, which is actually the letter Beth, right? And that means in. It literally translates as in or among, within or among. When Muslims say their prayer in Arabic, or they would read a verse or ayat from the Quran, they'll say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and that's translated as in the name of Allah, the Yield, the Merciful, right? Or the Beneficent, the Merciful. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. So Bismi means in the name. Bih, in or by way of Ismi, which means name. Bismi Allah, in the name of Allah. So you're you're looking at this from the context of that statement being already past the start point. You're within the beginning phases of it, just to give you a concept. So when we go and to drive that home, when you read the first chapter of the Circle 7, Creation and Fall of Man, the creation and fall of man, it says the following: time never was when man was not. If life of man at any time began, a time would come when it would end. The thoughts of Allah cannot be circumscribed. No finite man can comprehend things infinite. All finite things are subject unto change. All finite things will cease to be because there was a time when they were not. The bodies and the souls of men are finite things, and they will change. Yea, from the finite point of view, the time will come when there will be no more. But man himself is not the body nor the soul. He is a spirit and a part of Allah. Creative fate gave to man, to spirit man, a soul that he might function on the plane of soul. Gave him a body of flesh that he might function on the plane of things made manifest. Why did creative fate give to man, to spirit man, a soul that he might function on the plane of soul? Why did creative fate give to soul a body of flesh that he might function on the things of plane of things that are made manifest, right? So why did creative fate give to soul a body of flesh that he might function on the plane of things that are made manifest? When you go into the chapter furthermore, in reference to chapter 11, it also says, time never was when man was not. That which begins will have an end. If man was not, the time will come when he will end. Right? So everything that has a beginning will have an end. Everything that has a beginning will have an end. So just putting that in the context of the Logos. So this is very important to recognize that you're dealing with an expression of a thought. This ties back to my episode on thought is the cause of it all. And that thought is expressed in sound. Before the written word, there has to be the spoken word. The utterance. Utterance is sound. To utter something. That's the first vibration. Even thought is measured in a wave, as sound is measured in a wave. You have thought waves. That is frequency. Frequency is vibration, and vibration is commonly manifested as sound first. Even if frequency is manifested in light, light energy can convert to sound energy. Always. And we're going to get a little deeper into that. But what I want to kind of drive home in that, when we deal with the beginning, right, is that we are constantly told that, and this ties into the Logos, right? We're from one hand, you have a religious perspective of the beginning, and the other hand, you have what they would call a scientific, conventional scientific, because most conventional science, particularly in the Western world, rejects a lot of the esoteric teachings, and only to find out later that those esoteric teachings are indeed true. But just to kind of give you the concept. So, from one hand, from the the institutionalized religious aspect, you have those who will say that a god or even gods did all the creation. They just said it would happen, and it was, right? Even in the book of Genesis, when it comes to creation, the creation is done in the form of words, utterances. Let there be light, and there was light, right? Even when it talks about man, there's a conversation, there's words. There is a conversation, there's a talk. I believe in Genesis chapter 1, verse 29. I could be wrong. But that section that speaks about when it says God said, let us make man, right? I should say, I apologize. It's 26. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. It says, and God said, let us make man in our image and after our likeness, and let him have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them, right? So, to be clear, there's a conversation. And even in that again proves the point that Elohim is plural. You're not dealing with one being. You're dealing with a council, a group, or a council of beings having a conversation about the creation of man. They're having a conversation about the concept of man, right? And they say, let us. This is an idea. Let us do this. Sound like a good idea. Let's go ahead and make that happen. We'll make somebody who look like us and let that person have dominion over everything we just created, right? As if they were just creating to create. They were just creating heavens and earth to do something. And then they said, what are we going to do with this? Oh, I got an idea. Let's make a manager. Let's make a man. He's going to manage all this. So it's very interesting. But in the Quran of Mecca, or the Great Quran of Muhammad, Al-Quran, it says that Allah simply says, be and it is, or kun fayakun, right? Kun fayakun. Exist and it comes into existence. Be and it is. So in each of these conversations, and there's other creation stories as well. There's countless creation stories that are similar. Stories that predate the Bible. When you get into ancient Samaria, ancient Kemet, what they call Egypt today, there are plenty of creation stories, right? And the whole point of it is that they all have a conversation involved. Thus, fast forward to the book of John. In the beginning was the Word, the Logos, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. So you have this word, this Logos, this idea, this concept, this expression of that thought that is with God, who we call God. Whether you want to make God the Elohim, a council, or God just the one being, the creator, the universal creator. This word is one with him, because the word, the Logos, is needed to make these things manifest. Whenever you have a conversation, you need to have, or when you have an idea, you need to have a conversation. And that's something to think about, even if it's in your head. But we're going to get more into that in the next half. Now, when it comes to the Logos is not only a term that is used within the Bible and or Moor science. It also is referred to quite heavily in the theosophical doctrines. And shout out to Dr. Jose Pimienta Bay. I did my interview with him sometime. You can check that out. Previously, I did the interview with him. And in his book, Othello's Children in the New World, in that specific chapter, chapter 6, where he speaks about Sufism, I should say, he mentioned about Moor science, for one, being likened to the theosophical teachings, or being classified under that, but also giving a definition of what that is, and we kind of explored that within the interview. Now, interestingly enough, within the theosophical doctrine, it is recognized that there is one boundless, immutable principle, one absolute reality, from which all things manifest, basically. And it is considered to be beyond the range and reach of any human thought or expression, right? Now, this ties in with chapter 1 of the Circle 7 that I just read when I spoke about when I said that the thoughts of Allah cannot be circumscribed. No finite man can comprehend things infinite. All finite things are subject unto change. All finite things cease to be because there was a time when they were not. Right? So, man is a thought of Allah, and all thoughts of Allah are infinite. They are not measured up by time, for things that are concerned with time begin and end. The thoughts of Allah are the everlasting of the past unto the never-ending days to come. And so is man, the spirit man. Okay? But my point of that being is simply that when we deal with being beyond the reach of any human thought of this or expression, we're dealing with going into divine thought that infinite thought, because no finite man can comprehend things infinite, right? So, that being said, the manifested universe is contained within this absolute reality. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The Sufis, they have an esoteric definition or meaning subscribed to the kalimat. Kalimat means words. So we're getting back into the word, the logos, which is La ilaha illallah. When a person converts to Islam and they give what's known as the Shahada, which is bearing witness. Remember? Bearing witness to the light. Like John, the Shahada. When they give their Shahada, they say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. And then after that, they say a series of other words. But the key phrase in that is La ilaha illallah. And that usually translates as, there is no God but God. There is no God but Allah, right? The deeper esoteric meaning that is applied by the Sufis is that there is no existence except through Allah, or Allah, the only reality, basically implying that the only reality is Allah. Allah is all, right? That is, Allah is the absolute reality. That is the name that Muslims attribute to the absolute reality. Okay? All, you can't add to it and you can't take away from it. You can't take away from it because where would you put? You can't add to it because where would you get it from, since the all occupy places, all places and spaces of time. So again, the manifested universe is contained within this absolute reality and is a conditioned symbol of it. So in the totality of this manifested universe that we have observed, there are three aspects. Now, this is according to three theosophical teachings. There are three aspects that are to be conceived. One is the unmanifested, which is the precursor of the manifested. The second is the life or the spirit of the universe, what they would call spirit matter. And the third is the universal world soul. Okay? So that's the unmanifested, spirit life, or cosmic spirit, and then universal world soul. And interestingly enough, they identify these as the first logos, the second logos, and the third logos. Keep in mind, the word logos is Greek for word. The first logos, the first cosmic logos, the second cosmic logos, and the third cosmic logos. And from these three basic creative principles, which is your triune, right? Wisdom, will, and love, from three manifests, gives birth to, breathes forth seven, right? And we'll get into the actual portion of the circle seven that speaks of that. From these three basic principles, and we talked about this again in our previous episode, Holy Trinity Explained, right? From these, there are successive manifestations or emanations that are issued in an ordered sequence. And from these, you get your multiple, countless universes, or your multiverses. That's what it said. In reality, this is none other than Kabbalah. And I did a particular episode earlier that you can go back in the archive pertaining to Kabbalah. The first one, where I spoke about the creation of man, the fall of man, the Elohim, and Kabbalah, right? So this is what would be called in Kabbalah the three veils of negative existence. That's Aiyn, Ein Sof, and Ein Sof Or. Okay, so first I'm going to go into Aiyn. Keep in mind, we're dealing with the law of three. Aiyn, Ein Sof Or. So Aiyn, which is the highest and the first of the veils, literally translates as nothing or no. So it's absolute emptiness. It is the state of nothingness. Okay? The word Aiyn means a state of nothingness, which denotes that which was before things came into existence. Now, the interesting thing about Aiyn is that in gematria, which is a Hebraic form of numerology, Aiyn is a letter, and it is a letter that represents the number 70. 7 plus 0 equals 7. Okay? Keep that in mind. That goes back to the Logos circle 7. Right? The Logos circle 7. Now, when this letter Aiyn actually comes from the Proto-Semitic Aiyn in the Phoenician word, which is an eye shape, which goes back to the ear hieroglyph of ancient Kemet. So that's where you get your Eye of Ra, right? The all-seeing eye. And in Moor science, we refer to that eye as the Eye of Allah that you have on the divine constitution and bylaws, right? So even when you deal with Ra, one of the names in the Bible that's used to describe God is El Roi or El Ra'i, which means God who sees. That's mentioned in Genesis chapter 16, verse 13. And that name was mentioned by Hagar, who was from Egypt, Kemet. She's described as an Egyptian. So again, that ties back to Ra, the Eye of Ra, okay? So, and Hagar is actually mentioned in the Circle 7, chapter 45, verse 3, where it says the Egyptians, who were the Hamathites, and of a direct descendant of Mizraim, the Arabians, the seed of Hagar, Japanese and Chinese. Okay, that is your eye of providence, which is a symbol, the all-seeing eye of God. That's a symbol usually displaying an eye surrounded by rays of light. So we're going back to the light. Okay, that's on the Great Seal of the United States. When you see that seal of the pyramid, and in the triangle above the pyramid, where the capstone is removed, you have that triangle with the eye in it. And underneath it, you see the ribbon where it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order. That is your eye of providence, right? And in the questionnaire, key 98 in the Moorish questionnaire, the question is asked, what is Elohim sometimes called? The 7 eyes of Allah, okay? Also going back into where you get into the book of Revelation, chapter 5, verse 6, where it says, I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of 4 of the beasts, and of the 4 beasts, I should say, and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. And all throughout the book of Revelations, there's mention of 7 angels, right? 7 spirits. You got the 7 seals, 7 stars, 7 lamps, 7 trumpets, 7 churches. All throughout, you have this mentioning of the 7. We know Elohim are the 7 created spirits that create everything that ever was, is, and never more to be, as mentioned in the Moorish, as defined within the Moorish questionnaire. So that's Aiyn, okay? By the time you get to Aiyn, so Aiyn would be equivalent to the first Logos in Theosophical doctrine. By the time you get to Ein Sof, which is the middle of the 3 veils, okay, so it is a manifest or a progression from Aiyn, and it literally translates as no limit. Aiyn from nothingness or no to no limit or limitless. So it describes the eternal in its purest sense, right? So now you see the correlation from nothing, which is the unmanifested, to limitless, which would be the spirit life or the spirit of the universe, because the universe we look at as boundless. We don't really know the boundaries of what we classify as the universe, the cosmos, right? So from there, we get to the third veil, the lowest veil, which would be Aiyn Sof Or. Aiyn Sof Or would be known as limitless light, or even limitless fire, because Or also translates as fire. Not just light, but light by fire. Okay? So, why is that important? Because not a fire as in the fire that that burns in campfires, but an etheric fire. When you go back to chapter 2 in the Circle 7, there's an interesting statement that is made about light. And I'll just go into it. So I'll start from verse 12. It says, "We measure time by cycle ages. In the gate to every age, we deem a milestone in the journey of the race. An age has passed, the gate unto another age flies open at the age touch of time. This is the preparation age of soul, the kingdom of Emmanuel, of Allah in man. And these, your sons, will be the first to tell the news and teach the gospel of goodwill to men and peace on earth. A mighty work is theirs, for carnal men want not the light. They love the dark. And when the light shines in the dark, they comprehend it not. We call these sons revealers of the light, but they must have the light before they can reveal the light. And you must teach your sons and set their souls on fire with love and holy zeal, and make them conscious of their missions to the Son of Men." So in that very last verse, I read from 12 to 17, verses 12 to 17. In verse 17, it says, "And you must teach your sons and set their souls on fire." So that fire is considered that ether, right? I have a whole episode about ether, that etheric fire, right? Like ether alcohol. The cosmic fire. It's a cosmic fire. Thus, the third cosmic logos is classified as the universal world soul. Your soul body is considered a light body, right? But everyone's light is not bright. Some people's light are dim. Thus, they have not properly nourished their soul body. Okay? So, while these are just three principles, they're very, very, very important, right? So if you think about, like, in the theory of relativity, right? If you were to travel at the speed of light, then strange things would happen to time and space. And you would experience yourself to be in all places and times at once. So you, in other words, would be omnipresent. This is the experience of light from its own perspective. Okay? So you're dealing with the nature of light itself. So to get back to that lesson of the triune, okay? That lesson of the triune is very, 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 very important. Dealing with wisdom, will, and love. But you have to be very very understanding of what that is. Okay. And we definitely will get into that about wisdom, will, and love, because that is very important to understand that. So if you go to chapter 10, verses 14, it says, the universal law is wisdom, will, and love. All men see not the triune law. One sees him as a law of might, another as a law of thought, another as a law of love. The man's ideal is his God, and so as man unfolds, his God unfolds. Man's God's today, tomorrow's not his God. The nations of the earth see Allah from different points of view, and so he does not seem the same to every one. Okay? Man names the part of Allah he sees, and this to him is all of Allah. And every nation sees a part of Allah, and every nation has a name for Allah. You Brahmins call him Parabrahm. In Egypt, he is Thoth, and Zeus is his name in Greece. Jehovah is his Hebrew name. But everywhere, he is the causeless cause, the rootless root from which all things have grown. Now, that's dealing with the triune. Now, I want to get back into sound, and this will wrap things up. And again, for those who are interested in this, definitely feel free to check out my website, sheml.com, to get more information and to check out my literature as well. But getting into this sound, okay? When you deal with vibration, you're dealing with sound, as I mentioned before. This is mentioned in chapter 1 of the Circle 7, okay? Where it speaks about the plane of soul is but the ether of the spirit plane vibrating not so fast. And in the slower rhythm of this plane, the essences of life are manifest. Just that phrase alone. Vibration, anything that vibrates, manifests itself at some point as sound. Now, you have different types of sound. One type of sound is the sound that is only is the one that's only heard within the range of the human ear. Okay? This is very important. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Why am I even saying that? I'm saying that because there are frequencies that you cannot hear. Like pitches, a dog can hear. Like if you blow a dog whistle, you can't hear it, but the dog can hear it. So there are frequencies that exist outside of your range. But there are frequencies that you can hear. Those frequencies that you hear are called sonic sounds. Right? They're called sonic sounds. Now, the sounds that you cannot hear are usually called ultrasonic. Okay? Ultrasonic sounds. And there's another term for sounds outside of the sound spectrum. Just like you have outside of the 7 lights, you have ultraviolet and infrared. Those are lights that are beyond the visible light spectrum. You have sounds that are beyond the audible sound spectrum of humans. But there are sounds, just because you can't hear them doesn't mean you can't feel them. It doesn't mean they don't exist, and it doesn't mean you can't feel them. In fact, the mystery of sound is that before you hear the sound, you'll feel the sound, because feeling is the only true perception. Anything you break down, it deals with contact. Sound waves hit the eardrum, that's contact, that's a feel. Light waves hit the lens of your eye, that's contact, that's a feel. Fragrances, they have to contact your nose buds, or whatever they call it. The senses, whatever perceives the sense of smell. Food has to touch your tongue in order for you to taste. Again, that's a contact, that's feeling. So the one true perception or sensation is first that of touch, is really touch. And everything else is emanations from the touch, manifest from the touch. So that is to be understood. So why is this important? Because when we get into the logos, we're getting into the word, we have to develop ourselves in such a way where we raise our frequencies to be perceptive of these sights, these lights, the light, the sound, because these, again, we're getting into from the third to the second to the first, from getting into the limitless and getting beyond that which is of the human perception. And this is very key. That's why music is very important. If you notice, well, first I just want to drop a tidbit on the word no, because we went into the Aiyn. Aiyn means no. Interesting thing is that at 9 months, it is reported by doctors that at 9 months, a baby, when they start talking, one of the first words they learn is no. And anyone who's been a parent will attest to, there's a time period, they say usually when the terrible twos, that a child frequently likes to say no, 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 no. No is pretty much the easiest word to comprehend and express. Even when a child is frustrated, they don't know how to articulate, they'll just say no, no. They'll yell. Right? 9 months after they're born, they start saying no. Usually, it varies depending on the child, but as an average. Now, contrast, it takes 9 months average for a child to be born. 9 months for a child to be born, and then within the beginning, in the beginning time, the word is no. Children learn through negation. Most human beings learn by the process of negation. That's why in the Genesis story, you have the aspect of the tree of life. Don't touch the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They were told not to do it. They touched it, and then they had to learn their lessons by not touching it. Parents usually teach their child by telling them what not to do, because they come from the realm by which there is no limits. They're coming from the soul plane and the spirit plane. So children will do things that we can't, as you get older, you wouldn't dare do. Climb the tree to the highest point. Jump down the highest flight of stairs. I'm speaking from experience. All these things, they come from a realm of limitlessness, and now they have to come into the matrix dealing with limits. One of the easiest and most fascinating forms of expression is music. Your most creative people are those who deal with sound, because those sounds activate untapped areas of your psyche, your brain, as well as your spirit, to get you in tune with the universe. And so it's very important to learn frequencies like your 432 hertz and things of that nature. Get into those studies and to develop yourself to expound and be one with that logos. And again, this episode is just an introduction, but I hope it has served you well. So until next time, peace and love.